Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today for another episode of Digital Soul Presents. I'm very honored and proud to have this brother on, a brother I've known for a few years now, and I must say, multi-talented musician, songwriter, producer, bass, guitar player, plays in many bands. One in particular you might know with a leader named George Clinton. And out of that, this gentleman has played on many of those great legendary recordings, in addition to Parliament, Funk 420 Mob, Star Colors, Naked Funk Project, so many other projects and groups. I mean, I can go on and on and on. We'll touch on as much as we can in the short amount of time we have. But I want to bring to you most talented brother here, Lige Curry, in the house.
All right.
What's going on, brother?
Yes. How you doing over there, man?
I'm hanging, man. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. You know what I'm saying? We survived the pandemic. You know, I look at everybody that I see that came across that bridge, you know.
Yeah.
It's a blessing. Every day I wake up now, I just be like, and whatever they was doing, you gonna call it a pandemic or whatever you want to call it, they shut us down.
Yeah, they shut us down. But we are still here and we made it through.
We made it through, man. And you know, when you look at that, you say, you know, some of us have a lot more resilience than others, you know, and or even some just was dealt a bad hand, you know what I mean? You never know. That's something that you never know about, you know. So
yeah.
I'm thankful, and I'm grateful every day.
Yes, indeed.
You know?
Yes, I can relate to that, brother. Definitely.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, let's talk about the early beginnings of Lige, man. I know that you're from the Midwest area, coming from Flint, right? Flint, Michigan.
I was born and raised in Flint, Michigan. Wow.
Yeah, talk about home a little bit. What's it like back in Flint there?
Well, you know, Flint, when I, you know, was a little boy, you know, I lived there, you know, and I just remember like starting school there and it being really snowy and cold there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember I learned how to ice skate there and just anything to do with the winter time, because it seemed like it was most of the year up that way, you know. It was at least 6, 7 months good, you know.
Yeah, always cold.
Always cold, man.
Yeah.
But you know, I didn't really stay there too long. You know, my parents, unfortunately, at the time they couldn't see eye to eye, so they parted ways. And I left Flint with my mother and went over to Cleveland, which is, I was like about 10 years old.
Okay.
Well, we had a little stop in the middle. You know, I had to go down south with my grandma, my brother, and my sister.
Yeah.
But you know, other than that, you know, Flint was the one. I still go back there because I still got people there.
Yeah.
You know, with the thing with the water, that just blew everybody's mind. I was blessed that none of my folks was living around that area where it was really bad at, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, Flint, yeah. There's a lot of people, you know, I was like artist wise, there's a few groups that came out of Flint. When I found out, you know, how many, I was like, dang, that's pretty cool. You know, I mean, Michigan period, I think had a lot of talent coming out, you know. I mean, Detroit was one thing, but all throughout Michigan, I think it was a lot of talent, you know. From just what we do, entertainment, music, to sports, to whatever the entertainment is, you know. A lot of good, you know, like Stevie Wonder, they, you know, Saginaw, Michigan, you know. I mean, you know, everybody represent Detroit because that's a bigger city, but that's where he came out of.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of little pockets out there in Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of little pockets. And it's, but it was fun. I had a great childhood there. Like I said, it took a beating after the plants,
Mm-hmm.
all of the Buick, Ford Motor,
Yeah.
all of these people, they when they took a big hit with shutting all that stuff down, it kind of threw off the economy in Flint, and a lot of different, Grand Rapids, all those different little pockets, like you said, up there in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of took the city in another direction. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It just got crazy up that mud, man. You know
I
what I
can
mean?
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's my memories of it as a kid growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you like Cleveland once you got there?
Well, Cleveland, like I said, it was a bigger place. My mom had chose there because her brothers lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And she went there because they promised to hook her up, with a place to stay, and they was looking out for each other, brothers and
Yeah.
sisters.
Yeah.
And but I mean, I met a lot more people in Cleveland, put it like that. The neighborhood, this was back in 1967,
Yeah.
and 68, and but probably the best thing, after I got in there pretty good, is I met Michael Hampton. Now my mother's maiden name is Hampton, so she married a guy who his name was Curry. But my mother and Michael Hampton's father is brothers and sisters.
Right.
So Michael, he has a couple of brothers, but he and I, we got to be real tight. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
know how those cousins, some cousins you get tight with.
Yeah. Just you form a brotherhood. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
just, we was always hanging out. And then the music thing, from the sports to the music, like when we was playing Little League baseball, Michael was the pitcher and I was the catcher.
Okay.
That's how we was like frickin' frack.
Yeah, that's what's up.
But we was every bit of every, we was just hanging, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the music came, and that was even deeper, because he started playing first, and he got a guitar, so I wanted a guitar. So he started getting really, really good though. But in Cleveland also, I was playing a lot of sports too. Like I didn't jump right off into music. Like throughout my junior high and high school, I played, football, ran track a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
played some baseball,
Okay.
you know, but that was a thing too. And my mother wanted us to all stay active,
Mm-hmm.
so because she's very athletic too,
Yeah.
and that was really good, especially now when I look back at it, by the time I became a senior in high school, I wanted to stop doing sports because I started playing guitar then,
Yeah.
and then you start realizing, like, when you get really, kind of good at playing a few songs, you see the girls over there in the corner be looking at you like, whoa, you like play motherfucking guitar.
That's a motivation for you right there.
Oh man, between me and Mike, I know we was heavily motivated.
Yeah.
Heavily. And no question.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. But my years in Cleveland, I ended up graduating out of high school in Cleveland. I didn't go right into college, but I stayed out. I traveled around with this band, and then I left them, and then I went back home, and then I went to Central State University. You know, I didn't graduate. It was like a couple of years. Then I left that, and I went to Milwaukee with one of my buddies, and we was gonna start a band, but that didn't really happen. You know, for the sake of, I guess, the area and everything. But then Michael had already got with P-Funk like around 74 when he graduated. And I was like still in high school when he got with it.
Okay.
Band,
Yeah.
you know? And you know, and then, you know, he came when I was in Milwaukee. One time he came to Chicago, and me and my boy drove up to Chicago to see him. And you know, he had been in the band for a little while. Now this is like around 78, 79, into 78, beginning of 79, something like that. And then I went up there to see him and was kicking it, you know. And then the management was asking me, you know, like, would you like to come out on the road? And I was like, come out on the road and do what? You know, because Rodney Ski Curtis was playing bass and everything. Now, when they had met us, you know, I didn't even go through that craziness, but they met us through some guys in Cleveland. And we ended up, you know, that's where we played at so they could see us.
Okay.
P-Funk. They knew P-Funk. And they came by the house. It was like an after party. This was like 1974.
Yeah.
And they were still riding around in station wagons. There wasn't no tour buses and no mothership yet. You know?
The early days. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, they had them albums out like Hardcore Jollies and Standing on the Verge, all that hard ass shit. I still love that shit to this day. You know, it never gets old to me.
Yeah.
Alice in My Fantasy and all that shit.
Oh man.
All day and all night.
Yeah.
Jimmy's got a little bit of bitch in him, you know, all that shit. You know, that period, you know, when you seen Pedro Bell's artwork at its finest, that's what I like, you know. I like that period. And, you know, everybody got their favorite periods, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Clinton has been doing it since the 50s, you know.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, yeah, I had a great time, you know, in Cleveland. You know, like I said, that's where we met Parliament-Funkadelic, you know. And I'll always admit it, you know, it was the east side of Cleveland.
Yeah.
We were forbidden to go on that side because we were from the west side. And our parents used to tell us, like, don't you be going over there. You know, because they knew it was, you know, it was pretty bad over there.
A little rough over there.
It was pretty rough over there. You know, and so we knew, like, but you know, when you tell your kids don't do something, then what do? They
get intrigued. They want to know why.
They do it anyway, you know.
What's over there that I'm not supposed to be looking at?
Exactly, you know. So that's exactly what we did, and you know, and I'm glad we did it, you know, because we were able to run into some people. You know, we were involved in a lot of talent shows in Cleveland. You know, me and Mike Hampton. You know, Michael was playing in high school. He was playing in the jazz band. Okay. And so Michael was already like famous around the neighborhood. You know, and you know, we started to put a band together, and you know, as soon as we kind of did that, that's when he got snatched up with the Parliament-Funkadelics.
Yeah.
Because we were still teenagers, you know, 16 and 17, you know. You
know, were you guys, were you a fan or listening to that stuff before? Way before you got into the group? Okay.
Well, that's the thing, you know, like one of the things that the older guys that knew P-Funk from Cleveland, their thing was because when they seen, you know, like Michael we used to win talent shows with Maggot Brain alone, you know, and because he was playing it note for note, you know, wasn't nobody doing that, you know. And I don't even think Eddie was doing that, you know. So, you know, the thing with that was like, they discovered that Mike was badass and we was both together, you know, because I would play the arpeggio on bass, you know, and then, you know, he'd get it off and but they told us, they were like, we're gonna introduce y'all to P-Funk when they come to town. And we was like, y'all don't know no P-Funk. Come on, dude. Y'all tripping for real, you know. And but sure enough, they did. They took us to the show.
Wow.
And after the show, you know, we went back to the house where the after party was. They threw a party for them, but our equipment was already over there. So the guy that introduced us was like, you know, from Cleveland, he was like, Michael, you're gonna play Maggot Brain tonight, and you're gonna let George see how you can really do it, because he don't believe me. And we played Maggot Brain, and all of them was there. Like Eddie was still in the band. Tiki Fullwood was still in the band.
The OGs, yeah.
That's what blew my mind, because I was like, I don't care what happens next. I'm good. I don't have to ever like,
yeah.
I don't, you know.
Just to be in that situation.
You know, like that was my bucket list and more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would ever, because we was, like you said, did we listen to them? We worshiped them. They was like, once we got a hold of that Free Your Mind and the Maggot Brain album,
yeah.
And then we found out like they were some black rockers. Wasn't no black rockers, and especially like they was mixing blues and all of that psychedelic acid shit, you know, and
feedback and all that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and at that time, you know, Michael was into Jimi Hendrix. We was both. I love some Billy Cox, you know, and you know, we was doing that thing. But when we discovered Funkadelic, we was like, damn, it's a whole group of these motherfuckers. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So, you know, but anyway, we were very blessed and fortunate to run across them. We probably was using the law of attraction and didn't know it as teenagers, you know, because we truly like Michael learning the solo note for note, that clearly blew their mind that night, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, we just partied on. We didn't think nothing of it, you know, until like about the end of the summer, like, you know, around August, I think it was, 74. And, you know, they called Michael, you know, and they got the number from the guy who introduced us from Cleveland. And I think Michael told me it was Fuzzy or somebody on the line calling him.
Wow.
And asking him would he want to be in the band. And me and him used to get together every day. So I was already over to his house. We used to just play every fucking day, man.
Wow.
Every day. That's what we did. We got together. And what we gonna learn today? You know, it was like that shit. So you know how that is when you're young. But anyway, Fuzzy asked him, and he got off the phone. He was shouting. He was like, "Lodge, man, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, what? And his parents was at work, and they gave him like, they told him like, we prepaid you a ticket to come that night. What had happened, like, I don't know if you know the story, like Eddie Hazel went to jail for freaking out on an airplane flight attendant at that time. And then he had to go to jail. And he's also in the middle of making his games, dames, and guitar things.
Yeah, that made news, that whole that whole incident.
But I'm just telling you, that's how Mike Hampton kind of in one way came about, you know.
Okay, yeah.
Because they remembered the kid from Cleveland that played Maggot Brain that night. And I'm pretty sure they probably had a choice of a lot of people, but it was a true blessing that they, you know. And I think Gary and Boogie had a lot to do with that too, because like me and Mike, they're like about 5 years older than me and Mike. Me and Mike is like a year apart.
Yeah.
And then Gary and Boogie, they like about 5 years older than us.
Mm.
So they were like big brothers to us,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's the thing. We didn't have no big brothers. We were the oldest in our families.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, that's kind of one of the reasons why we clicked.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, man, that's how it happened in Cleveland, you know, and I will always be thankful for Cleveland. I'm so glad that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there. And
Yeah.
you know, that to me, you know, like it doesn't get old. Every time I go back to Cleveland to visit my family, I go down there because they got like shrines of P-Funk everywhere in there, you
Yeah.
know. And there's
That's
one
dope.
spot where they got like the picture of the P-Funk All-Stars, like off in this big ass, and it's a big, huge picture, you know.
Wow.
And I'm like looking at myself up there with all the rest of the P-Funk All-Stars, you know. I was
Yeah.
like, man, this is really something, you know, to be able to see it, you know, and
Yeah.
know that it's gonna be here like forever and ever, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. That's wild. If you
You
really
know,
sit down and think about it, that's a wild thing to think about. It's gonna be here like forever on
yeah,
that wall.
man, you
Yeah.
know, that you've done something before you left this world, you know, while you was here, you made yourself at least uh useful enough to
Yeah.
achieve. You know, achievement is really good for your soul, you know.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, you might lose here, lose there, but when you achieve something and win, you
Yeah.
feel good about yourself. You be like, yeah,
Very true. Yeah.
you
Very
know
true.
what I mean? I mean, it's worth talking about because there's a lot of people still to this day that feel as though they're not achieving, you know.
Mm.
And but you can accomplish achievement in the very smallest things you can do each day, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, it just depends on what you feel is achievement. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And are you disciplined enough to make that achievement? Discipline is very important.
Right,
Yeah, you
right.
got to be disciplined. Yeah, because it's
Every
one thing.
day.
It's one thing to set the achievement or the goal, but are you disciplined to get there? Is the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah,
That's very
absolutely.
true.
So on the subject of discipline, I know you and Kid Funkadelic are practicing. He gets into the band. You're playing more, of course, but your entry into P Funk wasn't like you said. It was not as a musician initially, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
when I like part of that story, when I started telling you about when I went to from Milwaukee to Chicago to meet up with him,
yeah,
um, and they asked me to stay out. It wasn't to play; it was the help out in staff and management duties.
mhm,
Um, in college, when I did go a few years, I did, you know, minor in business. So I had like a few skills, you know, especially the type of skills that they had me doing though, you know, a lot of errands and stuff like that.
okay,
I was working with Archie Ivy and Ron Brimbry and,
yeah,
you know, different guys like that, you know, actually Ron Brimbry was the one who came up with the idea for me to stay out there because he was road managing the brides and Parlet, I think it was. Well, no, not the Parlet, just the brides, and he was handling Parliament-Funkadelic too.
okay,
So it was a load, you know, that he had, and
hmm,
he was one of them ones that, you know, once he seen how me and Michael was clicking right off the bat,
hmm,
he was like, "Man, you want a job?" And I said, "Really? Doing what?" He said, "You could help me. Is whatever I'm doing, you could just help me." I said, "Really?" Yeah. And he said, "Another thing, you could be out here with Mike too, because you know, I see the way y'all clicking and shit, man. He miss you a lot.
yeah,
And you know, a lot of the guys was older, you know what I mean? And you know, it's just to have something else to be occupied with instead of
yeah,
always maybe looking to do drugs and shit.
yeah,
They, you know, he was Kid Funkadelic. They named him that, and
mm,
he was that for real, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And like I said, when I got out there, I started doing all of this, you know, road managing assistants and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, we had an office on Hollywood and Vine. I was just talking to George. the other week when we was up there doing the premiere, and
Mm-hmm.
he was like, "Yeah, that's where our office was, right in front of the Capitol building, actually,
Yeah.
the Capitol Records building,
Yeah.
And he said, "You got a good memory." I said, "Yeah, I ain't gonna never forget this because I used to have to come in I was staying on Lancashire.
Okay.
And I had to come in to work every day, and it was like, I'll never forget it. It was some of the time of my life. That's how I got hooked on California too.
Wow.
I came out here and started working in the office,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I like it out here.
Sunshine, palm trees, all that beautiful
Oh, man. And back
wind.
in the 70s, the late 70s, it was real slick too.
Mm-hmm.
It was real slick. It was a lot of good things going on, a lot of music going on. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was very healthy,
Yeah.
for if you were into entertainment,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of stuff to do,
Yeah. What were some of the other groups and stuff like that that you were listening to at that time that you admired or were digging on besides like the P?
Oh man. Well, see, me and Michael, we grew up listening to Jeff Beck.
Oh yeah.
And I always kept listening to him, and he loved Al Di Meola, and I loved Stanley Clarke, and
Okay.
we was in the Return of Forever, and
So a lot of fusion jazz and things
yeah, a
like
lot, a
that.
lot of progressive
Yeah.
type. But then we were into like Grand Funk Railroad, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
We was into all of that stuff because we grew up in an area in Cleveland on the west side where rock and roll was really big.
Yeah.
And they had a radio station in Cleveland called WMMS, home of the buzzer. And they played all kind of good classic rock. Most of the classical rock stuff
Yeah.
is what we grew up on. So, when I listen to that stuff, it just still inspires me to this day. You know, I love the new stuff, what's going on. Don't get me wrong, but it was some real good songwriting back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was some real good arrangements and good instrumentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there was analog. Nothing. I'm glad I got a chance to witness both analog and digital
Mm-hmm.
formats, but I still am a big fan of analog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matter of fact, Mr. Clinton, we just did a session in San Francisco up here a couple of weeks back, and he insisted on he cutting to tape first, analog, because he said he wanted to get the grit, the dirt, the
Mm-hmm.
grime.
Yeah.
He said that because digital is clean, everything is clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he was like, he missed that sound. So, we did a few things.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's pretty cool. I want to cut like that again too myself,
Yeah. A lot of artists are starting to return to that now, to that form of recording because it's missed. That warm feel, that analog feel on the feel of vinyl and all that. It's missed, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With real instruments onto
Mm-hmm.
onto tape again,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you can still use the digital format when you
Absolutely.
going into the mixing and things, but at least you have that dirt and all that stuff on there first.
Absolutely.
Because you can't take it out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
you know. But that's what I love about it too, man. I love both sides of it. Don't get me wrong, because
Yeah.
now technology is just going into like we on some Star Trek shit for real.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm loving it, man.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Me being able to, I during the pandemic is pretty much like a business that I never knew I had.
Mm-hmm.
I got a hold of one of these DAWs of your choice, and started getting on YouTube and taught myself how to do a few things, asked a couple questions to a couple people, you know, and
Yeah.
started recording, you know what I mean, and taking and sending out via internet tracks and things, and or even just files, you know, me playing on something. That's when it became a business.
Yeah.
Open up a PayPal account.
Mm.
Lige, what do you charge to play on this track? Such and such and such, you know, or we could work something, you know, it ain't really no, no stress, you know, but it's work, you know what I'm saying? So I always just let people know, and we get a deal going on, and hit my PayPal account, and I hit the files back to them, and everything is goody goody, you know. And I was like, wow, this is a business.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting all the things that we learned, like you said, during the pandemic. You know, we had to sit down, and you basically went back to school on your own. Like you said, you taught yourself how to the DAWs and all that. So yeah, a lot of us had to do that. We had to figure out another alternative in this creative game to kind of keep the boat flowing. You know.
Yeah, man, it really helped out. You know, and I was like, wow, cool. You know.
Awesome.
I'm glad I made that move, you know. And you find out, you know, like analog is really, really different, you know, because back in those days, you used to have to cut the tape, and it's a lot involved. And you can only get so many songs on a reel, you know, and the reel was expensive, you know, and it's like, so I was looking at, wow, this really this levels the playing field for everybody, you know. You can afford to do this. And then you can still stay within the digital format, which is what they playing anyway on the radio, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I'm very blessed and thankful for all of that.
Absolutely. Now your first, quote me if I'm wrong, your first recorded session is on Uncle Jam Wants You. Is that correct?
Yeah.
First session with P-Funk, correct?
Yeah. Because I was singing first. They found out I could sing. You know, as I was doing managerial stuff, George, you know, sent for me to actually leave LA and go over to, he had an office in LA. We called it We Funk West. And then he had an office in Detroit. We call it We Funk East. So they sent me over to We Funk East. But and that's what, and they were recording at the time. So Gary is the one really, between Gary and Ron Ford maybe more than Gary. I did a couple of sessions with Ron Ford.
Okay.
I did a couple of singing sessions with him. And he let George know. He's like, he can harmonize with himself too, George. Check him out, let him do it. And we was doing something in there for the girls. We was doing something for the Brides of Funkenstein. Me and Clip was singing a lot on the Brides of Funkenstein stuff.
Okay.
Mike Payne.
Yeah.
But anyway, they found out that I could sing, and I started doing some vocal sessions, you know, and which was really cool. You know, I was like, yeah, you know, because, you know, my whole vocal thing, I was doing it locally anyway. You know, I was, you know, ever since I went to school, well, I went to school, but even before that, I went to see Larry Graham play. And he was playing and singing his ass off. It was the first record they was doing, Can You Handle It, and all that stuff. And when I seen him do what he did, I said, whoa. And it's one thing to play your ass off, but he was singing his ass off too. Yeah. And I was like, damn. That was the bar for me. You know, I was like, whoa. Even if I get anywhere near there, you know, I'm gonna be happy, you know.
Yeah.
but damn, he was like, and jumping up and down and shit, you know, I was like, release yourself, you know, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I was about 15, 16 when I seen that in Cleveland, you know, because we used to go to concerts and see my, matter of fact, he opened up, Larry Graham opened up for Herbie Hancock, because Herbie had Chameleon out. He had the
Okay.
hit. Well,
Okay.
he was a bigger name, I guess, you know. And Larry Graham came out and just lit the stage up, man.
Yeah.
I was like, Herbie better come out and fucking kick ass. Because Larry just, you see the flames is still over there on the doggone stage. You know? And but anyway, that's what inspired me more than anything, you know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Probably Larry playing and singing his ass off. Then I started checking out guys, you know, because you know, like I said, me and Mike was in the rock. We was in the Yes. You know, I love Chris Squire because he was playing and singing too. He played with a pick.
Yeah, yeah.
But he had the bass, you know, and he was doing his thing, singing Roundabout with playing that. I was like, damn, he's a bad motherfucker too. You know, so that's what truly inspired me to be able to play and sing, watching some of these other guys and really just challenging yourself because, you know, I just did a gig with these guys here in San Diego and I did a rehearsal with them and they was like, damn, Lige, how are you playing bass and singing this stuff, you know? Because, you know, when you play bass, especially funk, you know, it's real rhythmic, you know? And for you to sing, most of the songs like George and them, they just singing over top of that stuff, doing their thing too. They rhythmic all over top.
Yeah.
But nobody's really playing. Like Billy Bass told me, like he said, Lige, you got that shit because I either gonna play the bass or I'm gonna sing, you know, and that's kind of where he was at with it. When I first, you know, we did a gig with 420 some years back, and we had him as a special guest. And on his record, it's this song called Funkadelic Groupie. And we just assumed he was gonna play and sing it. And he said, oh no, man, you're gonna have to play the bass part while I sing it. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's hard for a lot of people to play, and yeah, especially bass, because bass is very involved, especially funk bass. Funk bass has all these stops and, you know, all of this syncopative rhythmic. It's almost like drums on bass, really. Playing bass, you know, because you gotta, you know, it's pocket, but it's a lot to it. Like even with Larry with his thumb, it's just so much pocket now. You know, and what he's done has evolved into like craziness, you know. I mean, some of these kids are doing shit now that's like really out, you know. But it's, you know, Larry still, if you go back and check Larry, that's where you'll find the basis of all that thumb popping. And some of his stuff is still very difficult to play. I mean, you know, I mean, there's a few things that I was like, okay. And he did it effortlessly, you know, and like I said, he sang with it too. So I'll be a fan of him. And Boosie, another one, you know, Boosie was more of a talker. You know, Larry was more churchy, gospel singing, but Boosie, it's hard to talk and like all that stretching out when he was playing, you know, stretching out, all that talking and shit he was doing, that shit is not easy. So my hat is off to all of them cats, man, because they inspired me, man. And I'm so glad that I got inspired and I came up in the music in the time era that I did. I know everybody say that about their time period, but you know, I'm just another one that's testifying to the same thing. I truly believe because the 70s was probably some of the funkiest shit in life. It wasn't just P-Funk. Everybody was trying to be funky.
Everybody was doing it.
Everybody was doing it. It was, you know, them funk festivals, it was so many people, you know, Confunction, Rick James, you know, everybody was just had their own way of doing it. You know, it was so much fun to see that, you know.
Yeah.
And now hip hop, like I said, I always tell people, hip hop brought that shit right back. Some of the funkiest shit on earth you hear like from some of these big hip hop cats, you know, and that's just the way I'm glad it went like that too, you know.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell people in a minute, you know, I'm thankful for hip hop.
Yeah.
Thankful, man. I mean, you know, you talk about resurrect, you know, I mean, when Dr. Dre dropped that Chronic shit, man, you know, and when Public Enemy dropped, what's that one they did about the planet?
Fear of a Black Planet.
Fear of a Black Planet. I mean, man, listen.
Yeah. Classic shit, man. Classic.
That's the shit that got the most P-Funk shit on it. I know that. But I'm gonna tell you though, you know, they James Brown was first. You know, they started. You know, I mean, I was listening to the Fat Boys and all that shit back then. You know, they had James Brown all up in the mix. You know.
Yeah. That funky drummer by James Brown is what kind of kicked that off.
It kicked it off, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, wow, man, and it was like now hip hop is like commercial. It's mainstream. Some would even say that it's pop.
Yeah.
Because every stream of music is using it now. Every culture in the world is using it.
Yeah.
Rapping in their own language.
Yeah.
Which is unique.
Absolutely.
You know, every time I go to Europe, you know, whether you're in France or Germany, or you're gonna hear like hip hop rapped in their native language.
Yeah.
It'd be some funky shit. You don't know what they saying.
You just bobbing your head.
But it'd be, you know, the format of the beat is the same. You know, they, you know, you have to stick with whatever happened in New York and out in LA, you know, whatever direction you're going, the format has already been laid, you know.
Yeah.
So you just put your, you know, if you Spanish or whatever, you know, do your thing. That's a beautiful thing, man. You know, nothing you can do about it. Like funk is the same way, you know, in that way. But you know, I'm glad to see it evolve and where it went, where I started with it, you know. And then even with Mr. Clinton, who I work with and work for now, you know, when he started doing his thing, he always talk about Frankie Lyman. He said, you guys look at Michael Jackson. Frankie Lyman, he said, was like his Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
When he grew up in the 40s and 50s, you know. And I was like, really? He said, yeah, man, Frankie Lyman had everybody. He had all the bitches, everything.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, you know, because it always fascinates me to hear, you know, because I used to try to get my dad, you know, to tell me a lot about stuff that he was into, listening to, because my mom and dad grew up with a lot of blues, a lot of gospel, but a lot of blues, you know. They were both from Mississippi. You know what I mean? So that's what I listen to, you know, Bobby Blue Bland, Muddy Waters, and John Lee Hooker. You know, all that hardcore blues, you know. And then my mother, you know, she liked Johnny Taylor. She liked all that kind of stuff. You know, but that's what I grew up with, man, you know. And every picnic, it would be some heavy blues being played, you know.
That's awesome.
Albert King, B.B. King, whatever, whatever King.
All the kings. Oh, man, that's awesome, man.
But yeah, man, I'm a big fan of blues too, still to this day.
Yeah.
You know, that's another part of funk. Funk got a lot of blues in it too.
Indeed, yeah.
I was really blessed with me and Mike. Mike got a lot of blues in him. When Mike's playing Maggot Brain, you can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
He got a lot of blues in him,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing. George loves blues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he always said, funk is just blues sped up.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn. And he put it so simple, but that's really what it is.
Facts, yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's the same, but yeah, you just speed up the beats and stuff, and you got some funky shit, 1-3-5 can be played in so many ways. And I always think like, that's just some African shit, That shit came from the when the slaves was over here, when they brought the slaves over, and they singing all of those, blues and gospel rhythms.
Yeah,
That stuff came from Africa, man.
Yeah.
And it just developed into this country, that we live in now, and they done refined it. That's why jazz was so deep.
Yeah.
Black folks, man, breaking the rules of classical. If you were trained classically, that's good. But then they started breaking the rules, curving it.
Yeah.
Curving,
I think that's where the fusion genre title came in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
exactly. Exactly. I mean, because expression, you can go out, that's why Miles is labeled one of the deepest, because the way he expressed it, after Bitches Brew, it's like I was trying to figure out, well, where you gonna go now? Because that one right there was like, it's still over everybody's head.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It's still over my head.
Yeah.
I was talking to Blackbird McKnight. He's one of my buddies, guitar player. He plays with the Miles Electric Band at times. And they do stuff from Bitches Brew. And I said, well, how do y'all do it? He said, Lige, all that stuff is notated. All of it is written out. I said, really? All that craziness? He's like,
that's interesting.
It blew my mind.
That's real interesting.
Jay, it blew my mind. I was like, and he was serious too, because I know how he is. And they were playing some of these things, in the Miles Electric Band,
Yeah.
And Bitches Brew, they played some cuts off of that shit. And he said, man. And I was like, wow,
Wow.
I was, because Miles was just that deep though, man. He studied composers. He studied Mozart, and all that Beethoven stuff. He studied, like, he was one of those dudes who would break down compositions and know why things happen the way they happen, That's how deep you can get into music, and you can see it in all of the things that Miles does, it's just, he's on another planet with his shit.
Yeah. And then interesting enough, that on the flip side of that about Miles is his spontaneity, his allowance to allow mistakes, and also space. In
exactly.
Yeah, so that's he had so many different personalities in his music, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he always kept a badass band. Whatever he did.
No doubt.
He always kept one of the baddest bands, and a lot of people, whoever actually went in and out or whatever, worked with him, they end up blowing up too, I guess it definitely ain't easy to play with him.
Yeah.
and it probably depends on what he's looking for in you, you know.
Right, right.
You know, because like I asked Foley, I was like, man, he's like he loved the piccolo bass because
Yeah,
it sounds like a guitar, but it's a different sound,
yeah,
you know. And I was like, wow. So it's all about where he's going, what kind of sound he's hearing,
yeah.
what he's going after, you know.
Mm.
That's amazing, man. I'm very, you know, intrigued with all of that kind of stuff about music, you know.
Very
I
cool.
I try to pick Mr. Clinton's head a lot, you know,
Yeah.
because he's one of the greatest producers that I ever known.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, he's still up there, one of the
Yeah.
top producers, you know.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh,
And with you
So
and with you picking his brain and you also being the producer, how do you approach your projects as far as producing? What is your strategy, or what do you go in with the goal of producing a project?
well, I go in with a strategy, first of all, of being the best communicator.
Okay. Yeah.
Because when you, especially like if I'm doing something by myself, that's cool. But we grew up collaborating, and you know that's why you hear like the P-Funk sound is so big because it's a
Yeah.
lot of, you know, the productions is very involved. You know,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people, not only just to physically do it, but a lot of people are lending their ideas.
Yeah.
You know, as you know, somebody's got something, they bringing it to the table. You know,
Yeah.
and so you know, I noticed George. What I took from him is how well he communicates with so many different personalities. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and how he brings the best out of all of these different people who came from all different walks of life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
P Funk is out of Jersey, but after the initial you know, original guys kind of start spacing away,
Yeah.
he started working with, you know, Dudley, like, you know, Boosie from Cincinnati, all of that. And then me and Mike from Cleveland, you know. So it's different people came in from different parts of the United States and started coming in with their little input of
Mm-hmm.
what was going on. So everybody that, you know, that he came in contact with, Mr. Clinton, that is, he was able to find a way to bring the best out of him, to work with him, you know. He wasn't afraid to put this with that, you know.
Yeah.
But he had to do it because it was always a reason behind why he was doing something.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if he, like for instance, Knee Deep,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or One Nation or whatever. Um, and I'm gonna speak about my cousin Mike. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for him to come up with the idea to put Mike on those tracks, uh, that's the kind of thing that, you know. And then having a artist come in and be able to, or artists with it, whether they're singing or whatever, and to be able to relate to them and keep them interested at the same time, because you're working, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you're gonna put the work in, but also be able to get out of them what you truly want to.
Or yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, because that ain't easy, you know.
Yeah.
I've seen Gary Scheider go out on the street and literally get chicks that never been in the studio before in their life and bring them in there and have them sing in key, which was such an amazing feat to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it was another thing of how skilled they was with producing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of like that part in that movie with Ray Charles when Jamie Foxx was playing Ray Charles. And he told her, he was in the studio, he told one of his assistants, go out and give me a Johnny girl.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember that part.
Yeah, I do. I do. Sure do. Heck yeah.
He went out and got the chick, man, and the mama came back, put the chick on, boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history. You
Nailed
know?
it. Yeah. You nailed it.
I mean, you do what you got to do to make it happen, I guess, But that's kind of stuff like that is kind of stuff that amazes me about, getting the job done and, doing what you got to do. Because a lot of times people think that a lot of people are always hanging around you to do things. You might have to do things with whoever is just around you.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations where I've learned a lot more with Mr. Clinton when he's in a jam like that or something,
Yeah.
And you make it work. You make it work the best way you can.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, man, I learned a lot from that dude.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
a bunch of his friends too. Like,
Mm.
being in the studio watching Sly Stone work was a dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
Because George is he idolized Sly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so seeing Sly in there working on Funk Is Stronger and
Mhm.
you know working on some of that P-Funk All-Star records,
Yeah.
all that shit, he copycats and shit.
Yeah.
He got a different, unique style and approach to how he cut too.
Yeah.
And but you just, you want to learn as much as you can, man, as much as you can.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, I'm not stop learning. I'm gonna keep learning. I'm not gonna stop learning. I'm gonna try to learn every day, especially when you're in those situations.
Mm.
And because now, every day, like I said, you wake up, you kind of grateful for what I've
Mm.
been doing this now with Mr. Clinton now at least for like over 40 years now,
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of people ask me like, how did you stay that long? How did you do that? Well, my parents, they were deep about jobs, like they always taught me and my brothers and sisters, like, you get a job, you keep it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't always don't take it for granted. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
and that attitude, I always remembered them, because they always kept going, and they always
Hmm.
kept their thing going. So
Yeah.
those are some of the good points.
I know that's right.
you know,
I know you mentioned that Sly Stone session. I was actually going to ask you, like, did you have any memorable or favorite sessions that really stand out that you really liked or still was
well, yeah, that
favorable?
was definitely one, just watching him, but like for me, some of the best sessions that I had, definitely when the Uncle Jam One Shoe thing, when I started singing, all
Yeah.
of that was cool because that was the beginning.
Yeah.
But by the time he got to the Electric Spanking of War Babies record, I became more, because I had started playing on stage a little bit more.
Okay.
Rodney Ski Curtis at that time had left the band. He was playing, and then he left the band. I think he went back to school or something. I'm not very sure, but uh, Mr. Curtis kind of left, and I remember Gary Scheider walking in the office one day and telling me that, you're going to audition to play the bass. But I started playing the bass, and after the Glory Halla Stupid tour,
Mhm.
George wanted the band to go to New York and record for the um, Electric Spankings of War Babies record.
Mhm.
So we went up to New York. He had got some studio time, and I forget the name of the studio we played in New York, but that was some really good times for me.
Yeah.
Because just playing and in some big prestigious studio in New York, and George and Bird, like I was the bass player, so Bird, like George told Bird and Mike that he wanted some reggae track. He wanted, he's like, between the two of y'all, both of y'all write me a reggae track. And I didn't give a fuck what it was because I knew I was gonna be the bass player anyway, to play on both of them. So, Bird did a track, uh, uh, I'm from the third world. I forget what the name of it was on the Electric Spanking Award, baby.
Oh, Shockwaves.
Shockwaves. There you go.
Yes, Shockwaves. Yeah, I know that. I know that joint.
My memory went out. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But
yeah,
Shockwaves, definitely. Thank you for that, CJ. I knew you knew.
yeah.
Shockwaves was one I played bass on, and then Michael did. You know, Bird. That was reggae. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it was nice. You know, and then Michael did what he called reggae was funk is stronger.
Mm,
You know, that groove. You know,
mhm.
but he had Tyrone Lampkin. Well, they had Tyrone Lampkins play on that one.
Okay.
And Tyrone played some other shit,
Mm.
like something that nobody thought was ever gonna be. You know, because when I listen back to Funk is Stronger, the original one, the one that Mike wrote, you know, and Tyrone playing drums, I'm like, damn, that's some other shit right there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but you know, it worked. You know what I mean? It
Mhm.
made it that different. You know,
Yeah.
and but that song, and then we cut Gary Scheider did a song. He didn't do a reggae song, but he did a song on that same album. It became Ick a Prick.
Mm.
And I played on that one. So I was pretty happy to get like, you know, because there's so many badass bass players, man.
Mhm.
You know, and it's like, but George, I guess, felt at the time when I was coming in, this is kind of my intro in, you know. So
Yeah.
I always look at the Electric Shank of the War Baby is the first record that I actually started playing bass on, you know.
Awesome.
So that's that, you know.
Yeah.
Everything else is history. I also did like Parliament album too that came out. It was Trumbibulation. So I was, you know, I did New Do Review, I played bass on that. So it was a few things that, you know, they were cutting still at that time, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's fun, man. I always look at those times like I learned so much.